can't go to your team and be like, hey, I'm going to fire you for 3 months. I'm going to rehire you. And that's that doesn't work from a culture and just overall like business cohesion standpoint.
All right. It's my brother from another mother. Brent, we on the pod. When was the last time that we spoke physically in front of each other? 2017, right? And we did You Gurus. I was up on stage and Chase was with me and we were having a good old time after your event. We went to the place that had the bocce courts in it. That was fun.
Oh, the bocce ball. I remember that. Yeah,
that was fun. That was fun. We did the tour of a couple of agencies in the area. Wow.
That was back when I used to put all the attendees on like a tour bus and drive around the city and go drop into physical agencies. I feel like now it's such a rarity to find an agency that's operating in a physical space, but I'm sure they're still out there.
Yeah. And so we both sort of had a similar situation where we've, let's say, let our previous pasts go. And so I want to talk about the benefits of what you're doing today at E2M. Why don't you just give us just a 2-second review of like why someone should listen to this, because of the fact that you're helping a lot of people like myself with just doing stuff, like the stuff that they have to do on a day-to-day basis. Like, don't do it yourself. Let E2M do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think right now, one challenge that probably a lot of agencies are dealing with is the rapidly changing nature of our industry in terms of, AI, we can get into that, but also just the amount of different tools and technologies and tactics and strategies that are out there. It's probably very difficult for a small, 5 to 10 person agency to really have expertise of everything that a client might want underneath one hood. And so working with a growth partner like E2M can really increase the capabilities of a digital agency, besides like the whole, cost savings of using an outsourcing partner, leveraging some of that kind of, the geo-economical dynamics of labor in different markets, but also, a company might have WordPress, expert on their team. We have 120 WordPress experts on our team. So in terms of whether it's WooCommerce or Beaver Builder or Elementor or some of the different plugins that are common or membership tools, you might have a team member that has a little bit of experience with that. Whereas we have a team member that might be doing that all day, every day for the last, 2 or 3 years. And so we can kind of plug into an agency and really help them create a much bigger breadth of service, a much deeper bench in terms of expertise, and also the capacity, right? If an agency one day gets a big fish or gets 5 new clients all at once, right? They might say, hey, we can't take this on. We have to turn it away, because that's a lot of projects to maybe a small agency. Whereas, if you landed 10 projects and handed those over to our team today, it would be like a drop in the bucket. Right? We're supporting over 350 agencies with, I think, 17,000 billable hours per month. So, taking on an extra 1,000 billable hours is really not that big of a deal.
Right. And I've been watching your ascension to this position of running E2 from afar. And obviously, you've done a lot of journeyman work. I think, with You Gurus, you sort of were what I would call the camp counselor, meaning you got everybody together. You gave everybody instructions. You said, okay, great, but we're all going to have to also do our own work. And part of that coaching / mentoring / whatever you want to call it. I mean, it was basically like a mastermind plus sort of the sense of togetherness around a common goal. And, when we were back in the day, it was like $10,000, like just get a $10,000 nut. Right. And so those types of things were really cool back in the day, because really a lot of people were just starting it. There was no high level really yet. I mean, there was Active Campaign and these other tools, but there really wasn't like all these. So now you've got your GHLs that we play in every day with a lot of the agency world that we deal with. Obviously, I've rebuilt this agency to now, I think we're about 40 grand a month, just kind of doing break fix work for our clients and for some higher end dudes. And obviously what you're talking about is just so appropriate, because I don't think anybody really should be thinking about building some massive staff out unless they want to do it and they want the pain to that. Because I went through having 31 people on my team at one point, and I realized that it's great, but it's also, in retrospect, just a waste of time, because there's such better value in what you're doing.
Yeah.
Maybe talk a little bit about, what you felt like, why this was your calling, because at the end of the day, I see like this is a great way to take what your knowledge base is and really accelerate like your feeling of like, look, there's a lot of us out there that need help. And
Yeah.
I've done a lot of this work. I'm not just a CEO, I'm a camp counselor.
Yeah. I like the camp counselor. I might steal that from you, Matt. I like that metaphor or analogy. I think that, talking about kind of expertise, I think an agency's expertise, we've seen that a lot of people want to shift more into what I'd call strategy kind of work. And I think that's a great pivot. I think it's really hard, though, as an agency, as a value proposition, to go out and just sell strategy without some level of execution. I think businesses very much need a partner that can both help them strategically accomplish some kind of goal in the marketplace, but also do the heavy lifting of getting the work done, right? Otherwise, a business owner is going to have to go out there and hire a brand strategist and kind of an execution firm. But I do think the unique intellectual property of an agency really is that strategy component. It's not, being up to date on the nuances of Go High Level's newest features and how we need to code those automations and exactly how we need to link up all those, forms in the short codes and this and that, right? I don't think that's really where an agency's unique value proposition is. And so they probably shouldn't be investing in that internally. Also, agency work, because it's a service business, it's highly variable one month to another, right? I think a lot of agency owners experience this where one month they get a whole bunch of clients, have a lot of work, and then, hey, summer months might hit, and guess what? You don't have very much work. Well, in the traditional model, you have this team that's both strategy and doing the work. And when those team members are not utilized over the summer or over the Christmas break or holiday breaks, you're still having to pay them because you can't go to your team and be like, hey, I'm going to fire you for 3 months. I'm going to rehire you. And that's that doesn't work from a culture and just overall like business cohesion standpoint. But if you were to work with a partner like E2M, right, like you've got that variable. Like all of our plans are what I'd call actively managed. So we have an account manager working with the agency, making sure that, hey, if you don't need us for a couple of months, we're going to downgrade you to the appropriate plan, or we're going to help you kind of pause. And so that creates a lot better profitability for the agency, where they can have those kind of flexible plans. And then the details, right? We can develop that expertise, and the clients are really there to kind of hone their strategy, own the client relationship and things like that. So I think that agency model, for a lot of people that are in the, like, let's call it, I'm a 300,000 a year agency up to maybe 5 million in revenue. I think that's a really great model because you can kind of plug and play a third party. I think once you get into like the 5 to 10 million range, working with a company like each, there's probably a little bit more of a cost savings dynamic. Like, hey, we're doing this production work right now in the States and we want to move that overseas, or we might be staffing 5 or 10 team members with a company like that. So it's a little bit of a different value proposition. But I think for a small to medium-sized agencies, plug and play, flexibility, variability, the technical expertise, I mean, those are all key drivers of why we'd recommend to work with a partner.
And what's interesting, and I think I found this like really appropriate, which is from my experience, and I've only been doing this 15 years, so maybe I'm just, a baby in this conversation, but the local conversation, meaning the physical attribution towards the customer, is the highest level of last point of failure and most important threshold for most agencies if they want a long-term relationship with a customer that will be there forever. So, for example, I have customers that are now, going beyond 10 years with me. And the reason why is just because they want a local person. Now, I think that combined with what you do is the secret, because what you can do is you really think about like your leveraged asset of having a physical presence, which can't be done by a lot of other agencies in your local region. Like obviously, where I am, there's probably hundreds of agencies, but there's also most accounts we come across are being supported by someone in California or India or wherever. Like they don't even know who they are. And then when we ask them to like get access, they have no idea. They've like literally no idea what to do because they've never really thought about it. But then once you get the local connection, I think today, especially as things are moving quickly through the AI transition, boy, is that happening fast. And we can talk about that. I do believe that the growth factor of most agencies could be catapulted
Yeah.
by thinking through not necessarily trying to build assets, but trying to build systems. And that, I think, is where everything starts to become interesting, especially we've seen this with Go High Level and its system growth with what it's done with, building out architecture of, their sub account strategy where you can just build 1 million sub accounts and you can grow. I think that with a combined asset like yourself, that to me seems like again, why would you want to go and build all this and try and manage it and pay it
Yeah.
when it's all done? And I know margin becomes an issue, right? At the end of the
Yeah.
day, yes, you'll get X percent more margin, but even the best agency on the planet, the margins are still not going to be there just because, unless you're doing something really unique from the service industry category, but they're still on average between 10 to 20%. So
Yeah.
if you can cut out the ops cost, well, okay, maybe it just makes sense because there's no, to me, there's no threshold of pain around what I would consider the biweekly annoyance, which is that, oh my God, I have to pay all these people, right? And
the payroll cost, right? I mean, having
yeah,
that.
and it's insane when you start to bring in what I would consider near shore stuff or onshore stuff, not offshore, or maybe what's
Yeah.
the new term today?
I mean, we really view like our businesses, we're a growth partner with our clients. We're in their project management system. We're integrated into their SOPs and their processes. We certainly look for opportunities to improve those processes. But I think back to your kind of point on, where agencies provide value, the local relationships, or whether you're a niched agency. If you looked at the agency market for digital services as a whole, the amount of businesses that have greater than 1% market share at all is, in just a term holistic market of all digital agencies combined, not talking about individual niches, but even in the niches, right? If you look at the top legal marketing firms, right, that have lots of clients, they still have a very less than 1% market share of total attorneys, right? So you have a very decentralized market without major players. If we looked at a comparable market, not a comparable market, but a different market like, pizza or soda, you kind of have these major brands or beer, right? These major brands that have significant market share. I think if you look at the agency market or just services market in general, you don't see like a Coca-Cola. There's no Coca-Cola of digital agencies. And, why is that? Well, because agency services, first of all, they're services. Second of all, I think that every business that we do a service for, like building a website, doing SEO, doing pay-per-click marketing, while a lot of the concepts are similar, a lot of the strategies are similar, a lot of the frameworks are similar, the actual implementation is highly bespoke and unique. That's very difficult. While we can productize some of those services in terms of packaging offers, even the best productized packages, still have a lot of bespoke service offering to them. And I think that's why it lends itself to so many players, right? There's so many agencies out there that are 5 and 10 person businesses, and they have their little piece of the pie. They're helping their 10 or 15 or 20 clients. And that can be a successful business. You can have, I tell people, to have a 7-figure business in any niche, you need to find 30 clients and get $3,000 a month average retainer from those 30 clients. Pretty much every niche on the planet that's an established niche, whether it's pool cleaners, radon installation, HVAC companies, B2B software companies, even that, right? You could get into like B2B CRM solutions, right? There's probably 30 of those that can all afford on average a $3,000 a month retainer. That's enough business for a 7-figure agency. So I think there's a lot of opportunity out there. It's very decentralized. Nobody has a lion's share of business. And because of that, you have to really focus on customer service. You need to focus on that relationship with clients. You need to focus on how you get those clients results. And that's what clients care about. They don't really some people might have been burned by an offshore company before, and they might have like a taste in their mouth for that relationship. But that's like going to going out to eat to the local Mexican or Chinese restaurant and having a bad meal and then deciding, I'm never eating Chinese food again, or I'm never eating pizza again, right? It's like, well, that doesn't really make sense because not every pizza restaurant's the same. And, maybe over time you say, look, I just don't like pizza. And that's fine, right? That's fine if that's the case. But I do think that a lot of companies could benefit greatly from using a partner like E2M, whether it's E2M or not. And then they can focus their energy on clients, on results, et cetera, because that's really what clients care about at the end of the day. They don't care about where their Facebook graphics are created. They don't care about where their CSS code is written. They care about, does it get me leads? Does it get me clients? Does it help deliver an amazing experience for my customers? And I think if you're an agency that focuses all of your effort on that and then have a partner that can deliver on that promise, I think you're going to have a successful long-term relationship, long-term business like you've done with your agency, Matt.
Well, I think one of the things that's interesting, and you brought this up before, I want to think through like the customer journey, right? So the customer has a problem typically. They come to us and it might be a big problem or it might be a small problem. Like every day we probably get something of somewhere in between. Now the big problem stuff ends up for us being AI integration with things like N8N and building out really complex architecture to help them with multi-location strategy and invoice management. I mean, it goes on forever right now. But those clients, are more particular to like the strategy piece, right? Which is where we play a role. But on the majority of the clients that we see, right, they just literally want simple solutions delivered, and they want someone to be responsible to probably be the person that they don't ever have to make another decision upon. And I think
yeah,
that is like,
or just what do they call it? Like one neck to ring, or whatever. Like
right.
I think a lot of businesses. I think back to one of my early mentors when I was running my digital agency, a gentleman by the name of Noel Cunningham. He was a famous restaurateur in Denver.
Yep.
He had a few different restaurants, but had a 5th grade education. He was a chef, and he owned multiple 7-figure businesses. He was very successful. He did not there is no amount of coolness with AI. Like maybe I could have convinced him to use ChatGPT, right? I mean, he probably would have thought it was magic and cool and whatever because it's an app on his phone. He probably could have figured that out. Although thinking back to it, I think Noel had a flip phone. I don't know. Maybe he could, maybe he couldn't have used that.
Yes.
But I think I spent so much time with Noel in his business with him, and just seeing the amount of time he actually spent on the computer or on his phone. Like he was in the kitchen. He was making up these beautiful dishes. He was meeting with his, restaurant suppliers. He was meeting with leaders in the Denver community. He was doing fundraisers, right? He was doing all of these things. And people say, oh, well, AI is going to get rid of agencies. And I'm like, really? Like you think an agent is going to work with Noel and do all of his digital marketing across all of his businesses? Like there's just no way, right? If anything, it's just going to add another agency relationship that he might have to have, or it's going to give the agency that he works with additional opportunities for, increasing the value that they deliver for that business.
I think you're right. Right. And I was just going to follow up on that and say, what's going to happen is AI is going to eliminate the poor and uneducated agencies that are delivering bad value, in which we run into.
Or it's going to make them look like they're way better than they are. I don't know. It's going to eliminate them or make the average agency able to seem like they're a top performer. I don't know.
I think there's two courses of thought here, right? There's an aging population, right, which is sort of the people who we attract because they just basically don't want to deal with what I would say unexperienced people, right? And they look at the people who've got a little bit more gray hair, like myself and yourself, and they say, well, at least he's had experience, right?
Yeah.
But there's another level of the thought process, which is that, oh, I want the people who know the best way to do my TikTok videos and the best angles. So there is a kind of divergence here of like also strategies around like what we're looking at when we go talk to clients now, because it's actually like, I think beyond sort of becoming a good agency, it's becoming a good partner and knowing what moves the needle for the customer. And we're experiencing, I've seen a lot of things, especially with people going live on TikTok a lot within our client base and getting, sales that way. And also with trying to be what I would consider quasi stars or quasi influencers. Sure. Like there's a big move to do personal branding. And so, as we move along and these businesses get excited about, hey, I saw my competitor show up in my feed and
Yeah.
now they're like 10 times better than me.
Why
I'm
am I
like,
not there?
yeah, why can't I do this? And how can you do that for me? And I don't think many people are prepared for this. What I'm thinking is the onslaught
Yeah.
of really what we're seeing in the market, which is people are getting interested in gravitating towards building themselves into these channels and to do it efficiently and then to tie it all back, right? Because now you have to tie back calls to action and strategies. And like there's just such a new way of doing business. And that's when obviously where all the AI stuff comes in handy, because now you can start to do agentic strategies, which means to those who are not familiar with that word, it means now that the AI is going to be involved in making decisions and doing tasks as part of the strategy. So it becomes sort of a game of like who's good at doing like these multiple challenging tasks. Now, nothing wrong with what I would call hamburger flipping, which is just go to a client and help them build a website. Sure, absolutely. There's a lot of those people still out there that need help, and that's all they might need. But real truth is that the value that we bring, and that value I'm sure that your team brings, is taking care of like what's today, like what are we doing today to help these people like get ahead of their competitors and not worry that they're going to fall behind. That's what I'm getting from a lot of people. Even my oldest clients are now back in my hey, we need to do something. I'm like, yeah, I've been talking to you for 5 years about this. If you want to now do it, that's cool, but you could have started a while ago. So
Yeah. I mean, you have, two best times to plant a tree, right? 20 years ago. Second best time is today. AI did not invent, because of AI, we don't have more people on Earth, right? I mean, the population growth in the world has been, it's growing, but we didn't create more eyeballs. And, now if you look at the stats of how much time people are spending on their devices, that certainly has gone up. So the amount of hours somebody's in front of their device, the amount of hours they're spending there versus other places has gone up dramatically. So, if you even look at like the dating market where people find their spouse, if you look at, there's some animations online where it shows like over time, where did those things come from, right? It used to be like family, church kind of, that was like a huge part of like your extended family introduced you to your spouse, right? I mean, from ages ago, they literally would like arrange your marriage, right? Like 100% of your marriages came from the family, right? And or like church organizations. And that evolved to like work, community, hobbies, right? And then online kind of took over. And I think what we're seeing with a lot of businesses, while it's not dating, it's still similar in that a lot of business relationships used to be very word of mouth, very in person. I'm going to go to an event, I'm going to shake hands. And while there still is that stuff that's there, and in person is I think going to have a huge renaissance because of AI. But people's attention, where is it? Is it at their local meetups? Is it at these different places, or is it online? It's online, right? We know the amount of hours people are spending online are massive. And so if you look at, well, why have certain businesses taken off because of TikTok? Well, because people are spending 3 hours a day on TikTok. And if you're on TikTok and your customers on TikTok, that's an opportunity for you with very little overhead, right? With basically your phone to connect your message to your customers. And so while it's probably not going to give you instant results, you're going to have to learn the platform. You're going to have to level up to whatever the average, the mean is. You have to do at least as good as the average stuff that's getting traction out there. It's going to give you a very quick, direct access to that attention. Right? And I think that for any business, if your market is not on TikTok, then you creating cool, funny videos is maybe you're gonna maybe feel like you're getting these results, like, oh wow, I'm getting all these views, right? But if your audience is not on TikTok, you're gonna see all this stuff, like you're gonna see all these views and these shares and these likes. It's gonna give you validation on your content, but it's not gonna give you leads or clients. Now, 100%. If your audience is on Facebook or they're on Instagram, it's just a way for you to have very cheap access, right? I mean, 20 years ago, for me to access 1 million eyeballs was like a Super Bowl commercial. That would be a very expensive thing. And now I can do that for a fraction of the cost, assuming that I can actually reach my audience on there. And so I think those, like these new tools, the new tech, AI, I mean, it's certainly not making the world less complicated. I think I've asked agency owners at various events, like, hey, who here, since AI was invented, is doing less work? And like nobody raised their hand. Who here are working fewer hours, right? If you look at the work culture, I just read a headline about how AT&T was, returning to a hardcore office culture. Hardcore. They didn't
Yeah,
want to. They
same.
didn't want to recruit people back to bean bags and free lunches. They want people that are willing to give up their nights and weekends to work for the corporate mission. And I think that's very telling about this next season that we're going to be in. That these tools aren't going to they're probably not going to make your life easier in the short term, but they might make your business more competitive and they might help you make more money.
Right. So we talked about the importance of white label, meaning being able to utilize someone like E2M and some of the thresholds of what makes sense for you, and also the reasons why the benefits will outweigh the negative margin that you get out of it because of purely what I would consider the human capital element. And it's not just about money, it's about people. Then we talked about the journey, the customer journey. We talked about how that interplays here and how it's going to work out and how the benefits of, again, using like someone like E2M might help. And we also now just touched upon what I consider the attention span, like where people spend time, what they're doing, what makes sense, because this is today. It's not marketing for like with billboards and telegraphs. And I don't use the word telegraph that often, but it worked into this sentence. So my question to you is, what wise words of wisdom do you have now that you started with You Gurus back in the day, where you spent how many thousands of hours of time with different variations of agencies? You sort of migrated your path through, transition into working with obviously the amalgamation of, where DigitalOcean was in your past, and obviously how you got picked up through that subsidiary. But my question is, now that we've gotten to the point where you're at E2M, you see down from a periscope, or down through a telescope, you see down into this. What words of wisdom do you want to tell people in this last sort of like couple of minutes, to tell them about like what you think would make sense and what you've seen, like pattern recognition, where you've seen success? Because you're seeing 350 agencies that are in E2M doing cool stuff, growing, like they're scaling, like there's all these cool things that people could be doing. And I think about it every day. I wake up each morning going, how do I scale? How do I scale? It's like, it's like Lisa needs braces. It's like, how do you scale? How do you scale?
Yeah.
And I always think about that, because there is certainly going to be a level of understanding that, the real, on the other side, the real pain of getting through this process of getting to, let's say, a 7-figure business is getting through the thresholds of and again, I've been there before, and I broke that barrier twice, right? So I think the question is, what is it that you think people should take away, and what should they think about wisdom-wise that you'd like to give to them that could help them? Again, just trying to say,
Sure.
what have you seen successfully repeated again and again that you think might help somebody get scaling fast? I'm doing this a little bit selfishly, by the way.
Yeah. From my platform of You Gurus, I'm a big fan of getting clear on who you serve as a customer, as an agency, right? Who's your customer? Niching. I think niching, a lot of times people think that has to be a vertical. I think there's great horizontals in terms of just really knowing who your customer is, knowing where they hang out, and then going to those places and solving for the customer. And the more you talk about what your customer is interested in and what they need help with, and the less you talk about who you are and what you do and all that kind of stuff, like I think is beneficial, right? I try to frame everything that I talk about in regards to E2M in the lens of customer problems and customer value, things that I think that they might appreciate, whether they ever want to work with us or not, just how to actually grow and scale that business. So I think being really clear on your go-to-market is important. Now, most agency owners are stretched. They have very little time. It's a service business. So when you're not doing work, you're not billing time, which means you're not making money. And probably at a 5-person business, you're a key part of the billables and the delivery. So it's really hard to find that time to work on the business instead of in the business. And that's one kind of push of encouragement, that after doing multiple businesses and having multiple kind of scale ups, that I try to invest early and often into a team that is either an individual or a team or even a contracted agency who can work on, the growth marketing of the business. And there's no such thing as treating yourself as your own best client. That does not work. I've seen that not work in many, many agencies. Trust me, after coaching thousands of agencies, we're just going to treat ourselves as our own best client. It does not work. You have to create a firewall, either bring in a third-party marketing firm, whether you're getting your clients on LinkedIn or Facebook or Google Ads or events, find somebody that can come in and be accountable for growth for your business. And then over time, once you hit like the high 6 and 7 figure, hopefully you can afford to have an in-house like team member, like a director of marketing or something like that, that's just living and breathing about that all day. And then, they need to be firewalled from the rest of the business. They cannot take on client work under any circumstance, right? Because you're always going to put, if it's like, do we work on our own stuff or do we work on client stuff? You're always going to put client stuff ahead of your own stuff. It's just how a service business works. And so I think to create that consistent investment, you can't just do marketing when you have time. You have to be all right, I'm doing this. Somebody in the business is going to do this 40 hours a week, or then you have 2 people, 80 hours a week, right? And I think that's an area like service businesses actually don't require a lot of upfront investment. If we think about a SaaS business or a manufacturing business or a construction business, I mean, some of those types of businesses, there are huge barriers to entry. It takes millions of dollars to create a construction company, for example, right? You've got to buy heavy machinery. You've got to invest in tooling. An agency can get started for like literally $0. You can go create a Stripe account for free. If you have a laptop, if you have some skills, you can go out there and you can do something. But then I think that creates this like illusion that service businesses never need capital in order to grow. And so if you have a business that's stable, that's generating cash flows, generating a little bit of profit, whether you find outside investment, whether you find a way to create that growth team, and the agencies that we see do that have radically different growth trajectories than agencies that are trying to bootstrap their growth on the founder's marketing alone.
Yeah. So Brent, this is all wonderful stuff. I think anybody who's interested in working with your team and even probably with yourself, I'm sure you probably will take on a limited amount of time to spend with you to just kind of, I guess, get to know E2M. But what's the best way for people to get in contact with you? And certainly we'll leave information at the bottom of this video for people who are interested. But the best way that someone can just say, hey, I want to reach out.
Best way is probably to drop me an email. I mean, you can check out the E2M website at e2msolutions.com, or you can just drop me a direct email. That's Brent, Brent, at e2msolutions.com. Just say, hey, heard you on Matt's podcast. Would love to connect. Pretty much have a no-door policy. So I'm happy to connect with any agency owner, jump on a 15, 30-minute call, whatever works for you, learn about what you're doing, see if or how we might be able to help. And at the very least, just, grow the network, grow the folks that we support.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Brent. And we're looking forward to seeing around, let's say a year from now, coming back and seeing what the difference is in where we started from, instead of it being a 2017 to 2025 discussion.
Looking forward to be back.
All right, man. Thanks.